Okay, I think we're live. Hi, Octavia.
Hey, Jivana.
It's so good to see you. Let me just make sure. Yeah, there we are, I think. Um, yeah, it's working. I always have to check to make sure it's working. Hi, thank you so much for being here, Octavia Raheem from Atlanta. You're in Atlanta, Georgia, right?
I'm in Atlanta. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'd asked you before we went live if you'd mind leading a centering practice for us. I thought maybe could we do that first, and then maybe you could introduce yourself more? Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, good.
Good. Um, it's so interesting to just see you and to then hold the awareness that there could be one other person watching. There could be 10. There could be 100. There
Yeah,
could be 1,000. I don't know, but either way, you represent 10,000. That's
thank
what
you.
I'm saying.
I am 10,000.
Right, it's my favorite Maya Angelou quote. I come as one, I stand as 10,000.
Exactly.
So
Good one.
here we are together. Go
Yeah.
ahead and I'm actually going to invite you to keep your eyes open for just a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, and to with your eyes wide open, just start to sense and feel into your body, and really just to notice as we begin to gather ourselves,
Mm,
and in that way, call in our individual and collective scattered pieces,
mm,
and bring that all of that into this moment, the present moment. And when you just kind of start to feel that happening, like my little scattered piece from I was worried about that or thinking about that, pull it in instead of push it out, pull it into this moment. When you start to feel that, like more of yourself come online and into this moment, then close your eyes, and with your eyes closed, continue the gathering by noticing your body, and to however you find your body in this moment, to offer a simple prayer, even of gratitude, and then to listen as you offer gratitude to how this organism of your body responds to appreciation. And then as you begin to settle into your body more and more, notice your breath. And noticing the breath is not changing the breath, it's not manipulating the breath. It's just tasting the breath as it is, noticing your inhalation as it is, and noticing your exhalation as it is. And in the noticing as it is, noticing ourselves as we are, and in that, gathering ourselves even more. So as you begin to connect to your breath, allow yourself to be amazed by the inhale and to feel the spaciousness of grace on the exhale. And then to let that in this moment gather us into a simple yet profound mantra of inhaling amazing and exhaling grace. So, just for the next few moments, that's what I'll invite us to do as individuals, to inhale and silently say amazing, Because indeed, this moment is that on so many levels. And then on the exhale, to feel the grace that allows us to gather here. We'll take 5 more breaths that way. Inhaling amazing, exhaling grace. And then you just slowly, really slowly, like you're just peeling your eyes open for the first time. Just start to open your eyes. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you.
Made me want to start singing.
I know, amazing grace. Yeah, it's it's been like my little breath mantra right now. I'm like inhale amazing, exhale grace
Beautiful.
to remind me, even in all this, there's amazing and there's grace,
Yeah,
and that grace is why I am still here.
it is amazing. It's
Yeah,
amazing that we're here.
yeah.
I know. Thank you. Thanks for saying that and for that. You're such a poet. That's what I mean, maybe we'll wait and get to your book a little bit later, but I love the way you speak. I remember I just actually listening to you during that time reminded me when we first met. I was thinking back to we were on a task force, I think, for Yoga Alliance.
Yeah. Gosh, that seems like
It,
a lifetime ago, and it must have just been some years ago. I'm like, who was that person?
it
Where
was
did
years
she?
ago,
Yeah, a year or two, maybe.
I think at least 2 years.
Hmm.
And was it the ethics? The
It was
ethics?
it was ethics.
Do you know that they just released the new code of conduct in February? Yoga Alliance just released it. That's what we were working on.
Okay.
And in fact, I just wrote about it a bit in a blog because I was it's so great that it finally came out. I mean, it's not what we wrote exactly, but they took parts of that project. Anyway, I hope people will look it up. Maybe I can put a link in the notes later because it's important to look at that expanded code of conduct.
Hmm.
It's so much broader than what was there before. Um,
Okay.
and I love listening to you on those calls. That's why I would go. I would just think, well, if Octavia is going to be there, then it'll be all right.
I do remember on those calls the discussion between, was it the word like must and can't, like what's required and what are we suggesting? And I'm like, look at us. We're in this moment, right? Where it's like, well, what's required? Is a mask required? Or do I need to suggest it? And it just makes me think about like um, the need for both like internal leadership and guidance and external leadership and guidance. Like someone needs to say, we're not suggesting that
Mm,
you don't discriminate. And that looks like this. We are saying that this is what you need to do. And this is how we can support you in doing that.
yeah,
And it just feels like people are kind of like, well, this will be a good idea.
so important. There's like basic, I don't know what, like almost like human rights. Like there's basic things that you just don't question. That just are
Mhm.
there. They're not up for debate. And then there's other stuff that you can debate. So
Yeah. Like I appreciate it when we were talking about you bringing your accessible yoga training to Sacred Chill West, the studio I co-founded and
mhm.
co-owned in Atlanta. You were like, well, it is like a requirement that like, do you have a ramp? Tell me about how your bathroom is set up.
Yeah,
And for me, I'm like, that's basic, right? Like for a yoga practice, people need to be able to access the building that the practice is in order to practice, to access the
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I appreciated you spelling out like, I can't do my training there if you don't have, if it's not accessible in that way, or I need to help you figure out how to make it that basic level of accessibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I just wrote about actually in the blog. Is coming out next week about that question of,
Mm.
what is it? How much is choice versus accessibility?
Mm.
And I think we are, like, what I wrote about is how some people say, my classes are not for everyone. I'm not the right teacher for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true, but that doesn't release you from having to make the effort to be welcoming to everyone.
Yeah. Because
And
I
I hope,
actually say it all the time. I go like, because I really, my teaching now focuses a lot more on restorative yoga and yoga nidra and yin. And then there's like some movement, but I used to be a power yoga teacher. So I'm literally the opposite of what I used to be. And so in that way, I'm very clear that if you want a power yoga teacher, my classes are not the classes you're going to come to. Um, but I think there's a distinction between like brand and style. And within the realm of restorative yoga, if someone walks into my restorative class, I mean, well, I'm not having physical classes anymore, but are right now, but I need to be prepared. If a person can't get on the floor, I need to be prepared to accommodate them or
yeah,
make the practice accessible to them in some way, even if it means I have to turn the sofa that's in my studio, into the room, and that's what they have to use. Um, and so I think they're a little bit different things. Just like, even so, what's accessibility within a power yoga practice?
mhm, exactly.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have an answer to that, but my personal teaching philosophy is I'm not going to ignore someone in the room because I haven't bothered to learn how to engage their body or their being, you
Right.
know. Because so at Sacred Chill, we'd have, students from 28 to 72 in the same
Yeah.
class,
Yeah.
people who maybe came in on a walker to people who could stand on their hands, some people who the challenge is standing without shaking on their feet.
Mm.
Um, but we also weren't teaching yoga that was so uh, rooted in simply what you could do with your physical body either, right? Like we have other philosophical underpinnings happening in what we're teaching and
Right.
what we're offering. Um,
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's an important distinction that you can offer any level of class you want, but you still got to make it accessible. It doesn't release you from that responsibility, and it's not, to me, it's non-negotiable. You have to be able to address anyone who comes in. You just can't tell them, "Oh no, you're not welcome here." It's just not, to me, that's not what yoga is for. Now, you could tell them, like, you can't do that. That might not be safe for you, all that, but you got to find a way to include people.
mm.
But I don't feel like we really introduced you. I know people probably know you. I mean, they probably they know you. I think, at least in the accessible yoga community, I hope everyone knows you. But could you say a little more about yourself before I kind of jumped into?
We just started talking
I
because
know.
what I said before you hit live was,
Yeah.
let's like, I just want to talk to you. Um, I'm Octavia Raheem.
Yeah.
I live in Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised in the
Mm.
South, Gainesville, Georgia. I'm a mother, a life partner, a writer, a studio founder, a yoga teacher. And I used to be a public school teacher, and I believe that work, I know that work very much has informed the way I teach yoga and the way I create community and organize spaces. And I created a yoga retreat for women of color and Black women called Starshine Clay. And the most recent thing I did that I'm really excited and proud of is I wrote a book called Gather.
Yes, that's what I want to talk to you about today.
I love your little dog ears.
Yes,
All your little
I
markings.
think you sent me that flower petal in there, actually.
Yeah, I did send you that flower petal.
Yeah, well, it's a good bookmark too.
I'm glad it's still in there.
Yeah. No,
So
and
I
I got to meet
guess
you in person too at your studio, and you're there right now. Although I know you're closing, right? You're
we
closing the physical.
are. Yeah, we are.
How do you feel about that?
I feel all the feelings. Like I think um, I feel and have felt immense grief and sadness, and um, I've also felt relief. Um,
Yeah.
th- Owning a yoga studio is not an easy endeavor, even though I've done a lot of work to find the ease and the challenge. But I have to grieve and mourn the being in the physical space with everyone. But it's also challenging right now because just in general, I'm grieving not
Right.
being with people in the same way. And
Yeah.
I don't know if the reality or the depth of this moment, if we'll realize, I don't know if I can realize it in real time, or if in a year or two I'll be like, whoa, that all hit me.
Yeah.
But it's a challenging time to be a yoga studio owner. And I also feel like it's always been a challenging time for me to be a yoga studio owner as a Black woman in the South,
Mm.
um, with the socioeconomic background I come from. All of these things have been layers upon layers, and then we get to this moment called COVID that you can just multiply everything that it already was by
Yeah.
1,000.
Yeah.
So I'm navigating through all of the feelings that there are to feel, but I also feel incredibly proud of the work that has happened in Sacred Chill, and proud of the teachers that I had the gift to teach alongside and work with, and really actually excited about what the teachers that have been trained through Sacred Chill. There are only 33 of them, right? And there will be no more, right? And all of those people do amazing work and have a perspective and relationship with yoga that I'm
Mm.
actually excited to see that unleashed beyond the four walls of Sacred Chill. And
Mm.
so it's like both and, it's like joy and pain,
Right.
this and that. And um, but I feel like the essence of yoga, here we are, and now the yoga begins, right?
Yeah.
Like how much can we hold of the duality within the container of our being? And that's what we're all being asked to do in profound ways in this moment,
Yeah.
right? Like some of the letting go we've had to do in the last few months, I'm sure for some people, they felt a sense of release and freedom
Right.
unexpectedly, right? And even still within that, there's grief and heaviness with the lightness, right? So I'm not
And
as
I hear you saying that too. I hear you saying
yeah,
there's really,
I
because I
feel
know I've owned a studio for a long time, and
yeah,
it's a lot. It's a lot to hold.
yeah. It's
So,
a lot. It's a lot to hold.
yeah.
Yeah. God, God bless the yoga studio owners.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like slothing through, continuing on.
Yeah.
The work continues, right? Like physical
Yeah.
spaces or not, the work continues. But I also know, so I get a lot of messages like still daily, about there's going to be such a hole or a gap,
Mm.
in community, and that's where the light will come through. Like I
Mm.
also feel like in this moment that that hole, we can like drop down into it and free fall and feel like nothing good can come from it. And I also believe that it's a level of expansion that can happen as well. So I feel that.
I do for you. Like, I don't know. I told you this a long time ago that I feel like your words need to reach a larger audience. I mean, ever since we met a couple of years back, I've been following you on social media, and just like every post I would just wait to read your posts. Like most people, I would just like kind of want to maybe see what they wrote, but yours, I was just like, what did she say today? Because it's poetry. Like you're just write so beautifully and such, I don't know, clarity, and about real life and yoga together, which is my favorite topic, like not making yoga something else that we do, but actually making yoga how we live our lives now. And you did that so beautifully, and and you did it in your book. So I know that your work is expanding for sure.
It is.
How is it? How does it feel to have the book out there right now?
So I feel exposed. And what I mean is like, and it shocks me, right? So book came out June 1st, right? I self-published it. It came out June 1st. And 2 days before, I'm like, why am I not sleeping? Why am I like, what is happening? I share stuff on Instagram and Facebook all the time. Like, what's the difference now, And it's just, I feel exposed. And then the flip side of that is like, because exposed can sound like, did you not want to be exposed? But I feel seen and heard. And in this moment where I am sitting with like, what does it mean to be a teacher? And when am I going to see people in the same room together in the way that I have been seeing them for the past 14 years I've been teaching? It feels purposeful to have a thing that people can touch. It's like when someone's touching Gather, it's like they're touching me. And even if I'm like, I don't, like someone emailed me from Australia the other day, and I'm like, oh, we have a connection. Like I'm still talking to you, and through the words on this page, even if I don't know what you're saying back, there's a dialogue that we're in. And so that feels incredible to be able to still be teaching and be in dialogue in a way that is more boundless than I have been or had access to teaching. And so that's what Gather is like, gathering people, us in our little scattered places. Someone emailed me from Finland and was like, how do I get your book in Finland? And because I self-published, like my distribution game is not really what it would be if I were like with a big publisher. And I'm just like, oh, I guess I just better put one in the mail for you, because I don't know about like Amazon Finland, or I've been using Karen's bookstores, a local bookstore in Atlanta, they've been shipping. So that way of still being able to teach, be in dialogue, and connect with people in this moment is really powerful.
You said that so beautifully. Like you just described that feeling I had when I published my book. Like it's just hard to describe that, like being seen in a good way and in a bad way.
Yeah.
It's like being exposed, but also feeling seen. So that's beautiful. And there's something about a book, that's really meaningful. That you can, people. Well, first of all, to think that you're touching people's lives that maybe haven't met you, and that your work can expand that way is really nice. And it's such an interesting book. I was surprised. It's not what I expected. It's more, kind of what I expected, having followed you for so long. But I actually felt like in here, you're giving more space for people like it was more generous than I thought. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like you ask questions in every section, and you ended with this like gathering ourselves. Is that what you said? Like this kind of opening to like, I felt gathering yourself, like this opening to then go write or do some exploration on your own. Like it felt like very much of the beginning of a conversation, or like a conversation actually, rather than most books, which are just like a monologue. So I appreciate that.
You know, Kelly Palmer connected me to a brilliant freelance editor in Austin, Texas, named Brooke Blender. And, you know, she's working with me. We're going back and forth, and she's reading and writing notes. And in some places, I'd already had questions. And I noticed when she sent me like draft 1 of draft however many back, in one place she said, "Oh, you do know I'm here." And it was a place that I had a question. And I was irritated because I was like, God, I just want to be done. And you know, the process is like what people are holding in their hand. You're like, and it might be out into the world and you're still like, I should add this or take this out or do this thing, or why is that font so little, or whatever thing is, right? I want to change this picture. But I was in this place where I was like, I felt like every time I'd send her a draft and she would come back and like see something else and be like, well, what about this? But when she said, hey, there's a question here, it makes me feel like you're in dialogue with me, and everything you've been sharing with me is about this inviting people into like kind of this like sacred circle with themselves and inquiry and each other. And you want to be in dialogue with people too, right? Yeah. And I was very irritated by that comment. Because when you're wanting to be done and someone's like, here's more process, right? And so what I realized in that, I was irritated because I was tired, right? Like when you're tired, you're just irritated. And so I didn't respond for probably like days on end until she finally emailed again and was like, hello, are you there? And so I went and rested instead of responding to her. And I was like, oh, Gather wants to ask questions, right? And invite people to ask themselves those questions and to be in that inquiry. And so from Brooks kind of prodding and saying, I think Gather is something else. It's not just you talking, right? Yeah. And it also then made me go back and make the writing a little bit more spacious. Like there are no conclusions I need to draw for anyone. That's not the point. And even when I was a public school teacher, it wasn't my style. Like what I did was just invite students into inquiry, because I'm like, you have answers within you that like you were born with, right? Like this, I don't need to give you any answers. I need to support you in navigating toward the place where you can access your own answers, because that's going to do you more good. And so she saw that little glimmer of Gather is some other place. Like it's something else. It's not just you talking, like you have the answers. I have answers for me. I don't have answers for you, Jivana. But maybe together, we can ask questions, you know, we can ask individual and collective questions. And being in inquiry is going to bring us to more knowing and more wisdom than someone coming to us and saying, here's the answer. Like the moment we're in, pandemic wise, social justice wise, anti-racism wise, is a moment of like, part of the discomfort is some people are like, well, just tell me the answer. But it's like, without your own inner inquiry, right? It is like there are people who they have wisdom to share, but people also have to know how to be in a relationship with their own questions. And the answers that arrive from those questions, even when the answers aren't what you want them to be, right? Because some of the questions I ask and Gather, like if I answer them honestly, I'm like, oh, I'm really thinking that. I'm really feeling that. You know, and so that's where, and I'm grateful that for what I'll call that prodding and insistence and pausing, and that Brooke saying, there's something else here. I need you to pause and look at it. And then I need you to come with it. Like, what is this something else? Okay, you're going to, everything you write, there's a question you want to invite people into. And so that's how it ended up with questions. There were no questions in like the first however many drafts of it. Not that intentional. There were just a few, and I
love what you're saying. I love that you're saying, talking about the voice, because I also say, I mean, I'm in the middle of writing my second book, and I'm still struggling with that, my voice, because it's, as a teacher, I'm used to being the one kind of teaching, but I want to do what you're saying, and that's to have a dialogue, to feel like there's space for the reader, and that I'm speaking from my experience rather than the voice of authority. So many books are written as like the voice of authority. And I love that you ask, what you're asking, I think, and gather, is for us to find our own voice. I want to ask you about, there's something that you do in here, I think, that I notice a lot, is around what I would call it intuition. I don't know what you call it, but it feels like you're asking people to listen to themselves. And like, you tell a story about the deer on the road.
Yes.
And
that's a real story. That changed me.
Can you talk about that? Because I feel like we all have those experiences, but we don't, I don't know, either we kind of build them up too big, or we just ignore them. And I feel like that's always there. And that's a big piece of yoga for me, is like listening to other voices in my head, not just that one, or maybe it's my heart instead of my head.
So the story, I'll just like share a little bit the story of the deer. I guess I could also read it, but I'll share the story instead. I'm driving along at night in Georgia, and I kind of hear this message, right? And so I'll stop there and say, when people get intuitive hits, I think some people see things, some people hear things, some people might notice something and go, why did I just notice that? People have to be in tune to know how their messages come, or just be like, it's all a message, right? Everything out here is speaking to us. Are we listening? But I hear this message, dear too. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh, okay, it's Georgia, it's dark, there's probably some deer somewhere. But I hear it again, and I understand that I need to slow down. And so because sometimes I'm flying in my car, just being honest, like I'm driving right at the speed limit, I'll say. And so I slowed down considerably. And then within a minute or so, a mama deer shoots out. And I can just easily stop like this. And I sat there, and she stopped, and we looked at each other, and I was like, gosh, she's so beautiful. And then she runs on. And then, if there's a mama deer, there's usually a baby or two or three somewhere. And then another one runs out. And then I just watched them gallivant on, and I just sit there for a moment, and I have this, I just feel how I was able to pause, experience the beauty of that moment, because I listened. I heard, hey, you're going to need to slow down. There's something coming. And the only difference between that moment being completely beautiful versus a tragedy was that I listened and I slowed down. Right. And I think in that story I tell in the book, I say, the question I ask is, are we too busy to slow down, but not too busy to crash, right? Sometimes we're like, I'm so busy, I can't slow down. We ignore the voice because we're like, I can't do what you're telling me to do. I don't have time for that. But then I guess you better have time to be in this fender bender, and now you're outside of your car, and so I just was struck by just that, like, I got to experience the beautiful versus the ugly because I was willing to listen and willing to heed the message. But what if I back up a little bit, like where was I coming from and what was happening? I
Yeah.
just finished sitting with two of my teachers, and we had like chanted and meditated, right?
Uh-huh.
And so it's already in the space of what I'll call presence, right? I was already kind of like tuned in and willing to listen. And then I got in my car and drove on home, and I heard the message. And instead of crashing into the deer, because I think I remember I was like 6 months pregnant. So it would have been
Mm.
terrible if I had been at the speed I was going to crash into that deer. And
Mm.
so I don't know the recipe for intuition. It has definitely something to do with spaciousness and slowing down and rest and leaving room versus filling everything up. And it's a muscle, just like, we could go to the gym and do muscles. We can do chaturangas and build up muscle. I think over time, like I watch my son, he's 4. He has a sense of intuitiveness. He has the sense, like my son can hear. Um, my husband drives this truck, and my son will go to the window and go, "Daddy's coming." And I'll be like, "Where is he?" And then 5 minutes later, Daddy's home. And I'm like,
Wow.
why? And I realized at first, I was like, this is super deep. This kid has special powers. Then I'm like, no, he actually can hear, right? Because he's listening. And it made me realize, I'm like, none of us are without that. We just have
Yeah.
so much other noise and distractions. And when we hear, we don't honor what we're hearing, right? And so what I think over the course of living life, we're not rewarded for following intuition, because sometimes intuition is going to tell you to go left when everyone's going right. And that Maya Angelou calls it the still small voice, I think becomes diminished over time, as we do what that person said do, or we follow that, or we do that, or we take that job even though we really don't want it, or we make choices against that essence and wisdom until it just becomes a still small voice instead of
Yeah.
the
And
voice that we can hear as clear as we hear each other right
and
now.
then you also talk about the sacred no and saying no, basically, which seems related to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like just trusting yourself when that doesn't feel right, when something doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I'm
But what keeps me in touch with like what's real to me, and I'm not always in touch with it. I mean, I could write you a list from the ceiling to the ground of when I'm like, a part of me knew better and I didn't act like I knew better out of fear. I let myself be coerced or whatever it is. But what helps me to stay in touch with the vibration, if you will, of my own yes, so that I can also be like, well, what does my no feel like? Is rest. It is meditation. It is yoga nidra. It's journaling. It's writing. And I think it's different for everyone, But I think the practices that allow us to listen within have to be prioritized.
You call it, what does your yes feel like?
Yeah.
The quality of our yes matters.
Yeah.
And you said, a yes made in fear colors the experience, or offering a muted tone that feels half as vibrant as a bold no or real yes could feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something I'm working with a lot. Just it got me with that one. Yeah. I think yoga teachers in general, like, I don't know, I just feel like my life, I was always struggling to find work, and just I couldn't say no to anything. It was just like, you want me to teach that? Sure, I'll teach it. Like, every chance I could get.
Yeah. And I also think I think it's layered, right? It's like, well, we have to be it's just swati eye, right? We have to have some sense of self-study to know if if the yes or no is a self-sabotage, right? Sometimes we're saying no to things because we're like, I just want to keep hiding, and that's going to make me more visible, right? How long you would talk to me, you'd be like, why are you not writing a book? And I was like, I don't know why. And that was a great question. You asked me a great question. It was like, and a part of me knew, like, it's exposing, I will be seen, and all of that, right? And so it was a deeper yes, but the surface level had me feeling like it was no. And so you saying that about when I started teaching yoga, one of my teachers said, just say yes to everything for like a year.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't give someone that exact advice.
Yeah.
And because I trusted this person, I was really appreciative of him being like, you're actually going to want to say no out of like fear of like, I'm not really a teacher or whatever.
Yeah.
But the only real way to get experience is to teach people. And so if you say on one hand, I want to be a yoga teacher, I want to get experience, but you're saying no to everything because nothing's right enough, then you have to sit with like, what's the incongruence here? What really is yes and what really is no? But then I think we evolve, right? Like I probably said yes to everything for 3 years, and that helped me to understand. And I got into I taught in some interesting places. I had some experiences that were less than optimal, teaching. That also helped me strengthen my no. Then I had like an embodied awareness of like, oh, this is a hell no. Like I'm not doing that, and so I think it's a muscle. Like it takes practice to be like, what does my yes feel like? What does my no feel like? Where do I feel the fullness of a yes? And when is it no? Because I'm afraid of being bigger. And when is it yes? Because I'm distracting myself from doing the real thing that I feel like I'm here to do. So I don't think it's cut and dry. Like I think it takes practice.
I think you have such a vision though. Like, what is it that you said? Okay, something like this moment is already taken care of. What is the way? I gotta find it. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like, you know what I'm talking about? Today has been prayed over.
Oh, today has been prayed over. Yes.
But there's something else you talk about. Like, this moment is already taken care of.
I think I said something like this moment is the best moment in my life if I'm present to it. Is that what you're talking about?
There was just, I'll find it, but it feels to me like I'll just summarize. I guess it won't be your words, but I'll just say what I feel you're saying is trust. Like the basic message I get is like, slow down, listen, know that it's all, that you're going to be okay. Trust, and your ancestors have guided you here. Like that part, I love how you brought in ancestors and that kind of feeling of like, because sometimes I think when we talk about karma and like in yoga worlds, like we talk about like, this moment is perfect or whatever that kind of BS thing is, we say. That just doesn't sit right with me. But somehow when you say and talk about, your ancestors brought you to this point, like they have led you here to do the work that you need to do right now. It just felt different to me. I felt taken care of.
Well, that also is real to me, right? Like I'm speaking from a thing I believe and know deeply, which is in this body, in this being that I am evidence that someone survived what was meant to kill them. And So I'm going to go way out there. I had this experience literally 3 days ago in a yoga nidra practice. I'm like laying there, and I feel like I'm like, again, like I'm listening, and I'm like, what is that? And I like to drop questions into meditation and yoga nidra. And the question was I had this image of a slave ship,
Mm.
right? It just popped into my head in yoga nidra, and I got really like heavy and sad, and I felt it, but I also was like, this is a part of my where I come from. And then I felt like I heard a voice, and I feel pretty sane, you all, like, as I'm saying this, and the voice was like, listen, ask me anything. And I dropped the question, and I said, what allowed you to survive this? Because I know you survived because I'm here, right? Like, in my body, I know that people survived many things. Like, my legacy isn't, my lineage isn't just, I come from enslaved people. There are layers to who and what I am. But part of what I know is that someone survived the whip and the lash and the transatlantic slave trade. And I said, what allowed you in this practice? I asked the question, what allowed you to make it across that torturous journey? And what I heard back was like, I knew you would exist. If I didn't survive that, how would you exist? And clearly there were those who didn't survive, but what I know for sure is that I am evidence that someone hoped and prayed and carried forward what they could from where we came from, and then brought it to this soil and made it what it could be or what they could make it. And this is why I exist, right? And so that's what I know. And so when I'm talking about ancestors, I feel like I feel that in my body, like where I come from. And because if you think about it, like Maya Angelou, I feel like I've mentioned Maya Angelou 3 times at this point. Oh, wow. But she said, she has a line, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. And so I rise, right? And that line feels really simple to me in this one way. And I feel like that's what I got out of that yoga nidra practice a few days ago, was like, well, I survived the unsurvivable because I hoped for you. I dreamed for you. I prayed for you. I knew that one day my granddaughter would not be in this field and not be in that condition. And I hope that you would tell a story and remember me. And so that's why I started Gathering with Ancestors, because I'm bowing in this way to where I come from. None of what I am, none of what I've done and will do would be if someone else didn't exist, right? Like we didn't just drop out of nowhere. We all have ancestors, and if we are to heal, we all have got to contend with the lineage and the legacy of that in order to really start to shape and define and empower our future and legacy.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful that you basically, you made it positive, because I think sometimes we talk about the trauma, like of ancestral trauma through generations, but you're actually saying it in a positive way, the same thing.
Yeah, well, it's layered, right? It's like when I had that experience in yoga nidra, I felt the weight of it, and I felt that I'm the hope of it, right? And so I think, I really like Resmaa Menakem's work. My teacher, Dr. Gail Parker, wrote a book on restorative yoga for race-based trauma. And a thing I think about as I am so deeply curious and interested in like how trauma moves through generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I also think, I feel like I saw a meme about this. Like if that trauma exists within us, does the resiliency exist within us as well?
Mm-hmm.
And again, we started this conversation with both and. I am both and.
Yeah.
And we are both and it's painful and it's dark, and I come from more than that. Like for me, and it's like we live in a culture and society where I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
people, we have all got to reckon with
Yeah.
where we come from and the
Yeah.
history and what has been, how people have been dehumanized. Um, and for me, I'm in my own inquiry it's really a reclamation, if you will. Like I don't just take the story of my ancestors that I'm fed. I am curious about what else we were, who else am I, what else did I come from,
Mm.
and so that's what I'm doing. I'll keep exploring that.
I was going to say
um,
that last thing you just said is very important because basically you're saying that it's a living process for you.
it's a very living process for me.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's you brought that up in the book. I mean, that felt strong to me. Like yeah, this like it's almost like you're seeing yourself in time too. You know, like where are you in time in that long? What do we call it? A river of time or something? You know, like
Yes.
where are you in there?
Yeah.
And that maybe it's that you're moving around in there. You know what I mean? You're like putting yourself back to get the messages from them and
Mm,
then thinking forward as well.
mm.
I don't know. You're doing a lot of things. Yeah. I think this book, it's just me again. I guess that's why I say it's more like poetry because I feel like it sparks a lot of ideas and reaction for me more than just like a book about something. Um, not just interactive because of the questions, but also being, yeah, you're bringing up stuff about like your process and sharing that with us. Um, like kind of almost like it feels like the way you've found yourself, you've gathered yourself together,
Yes.
um, and how you do that. Like what are the main lessons that you learned in that process? Feels like you're sharing them. Is that right? I mean, do you feel like that's
It is. I'm gathering my pieces and sharing them with you, but also everything in Gather was kind of collected, right, from um,
yeah.
a place of meditation, yoga, nidra, prayer, like a place of reverence, right?
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I put those things together, and I said, "Look, I have something to share." Um, and so, yeah, I without my introspective yoga practices, like chaturanga wasn't going to help me right Gather. Like, not me. Like it might help someone else, right? That
Yeah,
was not my path. It
yeah.
is um, what I'll call the sacred and the chill practices that allowed me to just access deeper wisdom, you know. And then
Yeah.
journaling, I think it's a really important or powerful thing. I learned this from my teachers, Tracy Stanley and, Shanti Takarante Perez. Like I've always written my whole life, but they're like, when you practice, have a journal and a pen beside you,
Yeah.
or let's say if you struggle with the motor skill of writing, some way to like
Hmm.
record whatever comes up after practice. Sometimes it's about practice, like, oh, I noticed this, I noticed that. Sometimes like an insight comes and you just want to write that down. And I think like going forward, I'll be teaching a Wednesday night virtual class for the foreseeable future and have a membership anchored in my book Gather. And that class is, I don't know that I'll ever teach a yoga class and not invite people to bring pen and paper. You know, like I don't think I'll ever, because I think so much unfolds on the mat or in that space that we go into. That it's really powerful to write it down. And Tracy and Shanti always say, we get these moments of awakening. And if we just roll up our mats and go back outside, we fall right back to sleep. And the writing it down helps us. It's like, what's a practical way that we can start to listen and to stay awake? Because we all need to wake up and stay awake now, right? You know, and one way is to like bring journaling into your yoga practices.
Yeah. I think sometimes people respond to journaling, they think it's not their thing, you know, but I feel like writing has been such a great practice for me. I never expected that.
Yeah. You know, I've always loved it because I was like a little quiet.
You're a writer.
Kind of dorky kid that like all the things I wanted to say to people, I'd write it down instead of saying it sometimes. Yeah.
I got one more question, okay, about because I know it's almost an hour. I could talk to you a lot. You say the shortcut is the long way. What does that mean?
What did I say it meant?
Well, you said that basically it's like anytime you take a shortcut and you avoid the thing, it actually ends up taking you longer.
Yeah, that's
more painful.
I've learned that. Like, well, if you think about, I'll speak about birth. Like I have a friend who had what's called prodromal labor. I think I said that right. But essentially labor would stop and then start. Over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, this was going on. And she shared a story with me. She said her doula or midwife said that she believed that every birth was allotted a certain number of waves or contractions. And that her 3-week process just meant that when she went into active labor, or by the time she thought she should go to the hospital or whatever, she probably would have 10 more contractions. And it was true. Like when her baby finally came, it was like she exhaled her out, she was here, right? But she'd had the number of contractions she was going to have, but most people have it over hours or a couple of days, and she had it over weeks. And so that made me think about, it's a little bit different than a shortcut, because in labor there are no shortcuts, right? And but this idea that if we're in a process and there are 100 steps in that process, you can skip over step 50 to 60, but you're going to have to come back and get 50 because the process informs the ending. And just in life, I've tried to I don't know a way. The process prepares us for the journey prepares us for where we will arrive. And if you skip any part of that, you know, you might show up and not be fully prepared to be where you land. So I like, and then you still got to go back anyway. So
because you talked about kind of being jealous about people who are successful a bit, you know, and how maybe you don't see what they've done, the work they've done. I thought that was interesting.
Every overnight success, right? The cliche is it took 10 years. Right? Like your book, your work, like accessible yoga feels like in maybe last year or two it exploded. But how long have you been doing this work, Jivana?
100 years.
you know, with devotion and intentionality and engaging the full process. I've
been teaching 25 years, so Yeah, it just comes when it comes. Well, anyway, you're on there though. You're gonna blow up. That's what I say. It's gonna be huge.
Expand.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, I think should we end there? I just want to thank you for being here and sharing your work with us and your book with all of us and your wisdom and just the beautiful way that you express that in the world. It just always blows me away. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jivana. It was so much fun.
I know. I could talk to you forever.
I know.
I know.
I could
Well,
talk to you.
there were comments. I didn't read them at all because I was too absorbed in what you were saying, but I'll go back in and you can too if you
Oh
want.
yeah, I'll go check them out.
And I want to, well, we could maybe put a link in there for people to order your book
Yeah.
and to reach out to you. Like, I don't know if you have, can we use, I'll put your website in there, right?
Yeah,
I know your
my
website.
website. Yeah.
Okay.
You know.
All right. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Octavia. Thanks for being here today.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.